Okay, welcome everyone to the CDR and Databricks interactive training session. On the screen, you will see two links that I will be putting in the chat. You can navigate to those to view previous training sessions or upcoming event dates and topics. On to our administrative announcements. This session is meant to be collaborative and interactive, so we will be opening up Zoom breakout rooms here shortly. You can navigate to those rooms and you will find support users in there to help assist you if you have any questions. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them verbally. You can also use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or you can just drop your questions in the Zoom chat. Portions of this meeting will be recorded and made available in the CCSQ DNA portal. Just make sure to give us a few days to turn those around and publish to portal. And at the end of this call, we will be administering a survey to get understanding of, what you thought of today's session and what future topics you'd like to see presented. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing and hand it over to our presenter for today, Tim.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Tim. I'm a senior data scientist here on the user services team, and welcome to our interactive session. I am going to share our notebook for the day in the chat. I just did that. And I will kind of explain the run of show today. We talk about some stuff in the beginning. I'll give you some hints to get you started, and then we will open up the breakout rooms and you can have at it. So I'll start sharing. There we go. So our topic of the day is Databricks dashboarding. And you might be surprised to find out that that is actually two separate things in Databricks. So there is a Databricks dashboard section of Databricks that kind of operates like you would think, like if you've ever used Tableau, Power BI, Looker, any of the other ones. It works kind of like that. Not as much customizability, but it is there. There is a second kind called Databricks Notebook Dashboards, which is basically the same as a Databricks dashboard, but it's attached to a notebook in the sense that you can actually create visualizations in Python or R, whatever language you prefer, and then send it over to the dashboard. It's actually pretty cool. So there will be instructions on how to do that if you've never done it before throughout this notebook. So before we get into that, I have a couple icebreakers for you. I want to know how you're doing. I want to know where you are in your SAS to Databricks transition. And I want to know what is the best sandwich. You can answer that question however you feel. So I'll give you a minute. I just want to know kind of where your Databricks chops are at this point and what you are having for lunch. Maybe what you're having for lunch right now, because it is noon on the East Coast. It's also 95 degrees. Maybe a nice ice cream sandwich would be good. Is this thing on? Can you hear me? I'm joking. I know you can hear me. I really appreciate the AI assistant. Shirping, you might also enjoy the AI assistant in the dashboard. It's actually really cool. It pops right up and you say, can you make me a graph of XYZ? It generally works pretty well.
Where is that with the dashboard?
So when you go into the dashboard and you make like a new panel, there will be like an AI thing you can choose from. We haven't gotten there.
Okay, great.
All right, it's very quiet today. Feel free to come into the chat at any point with your favorite sandwich. I guess I'll get started. So we've talked about the two different kinds, Databricks dashboard and Databricks notebook dashboard. There are two exercises in our interactive session today. You'll have 30 plus minutes to go through them. The first one is on just a regular Databricks dashboard. The second one is on a Databricks notebook dashboard. So while you will get experience with both of them today, I want to talk about why in general, throughout the course of your real work, you would pick one instead of the other. So there are some trade-offs, both generally a lot of overlapping things you can do. So the reason you might pick the just plain old Databricks dashboard is one, because it's cheaper. I know you're not footing the bill, but somebody is, and it is less expensive to use the Databricks dashboard. The reason for that is the cluster you're running is the SQL endpoint cluster. So it's just a cluster that's just capable of SQL, and that's kind of how the dashboards get made. It is simpler. It's point and click. There's no code here. You just, use your eyes and your mouse to create the dashboard. You don't need to know how to code. The Databricks notebook dashboards do give you some finer control. So it is powered by your Python code, so you can customize what data goes into it as much as you want. And because of that, you have all of the benefits of having your work be code-based. It's version controllable, it's easier to maintain, and if something goes right or wrong, you can see why because you've written the code. And above all that, it does use your personal compute cluster, so it is only as weak or strong as your personal compute cluster. Not that there's a lot of variance between all of that, but it is good to know that no one is kind of simultaneously using your cluster and taking up the resources. Okay, so like I promised, two exercises. Exercise one has some instructions here. You can follow them, but if you've never used a dashboard before, right on the left panel here, there is a dashboard button. You can go there and, oh, I didn't mean to actually leave the page, and create a dashboard yourself. There is no cell underneath this for coding or anything because there wouldn't be, right? It's all point and click. Exercise two, on the other hand, does have some setup for you. It's a little bit of a harder problem because it is code-based, and it is harder because I've actually included a optional bonus thing to make it a little bit more complicated. So we're going to use the electric car buying data, and I've read in the data and set it up for you. But as part of the optional work, you can create a filter dropdown. So you can actually create a graphical widget that has an option you can pick, and then you can click down and have your code edit it for you. So again, this cell is optional, but for maybe more advanced users or even some beginner users just looking for a good challenge, this is interesting, and it's not something that you can really do with the regular Databricks dashboard. So I did try to get you set up there. All right, so let's get started. I have 12:09. We'll probably come back sometime between 12:40 and 12:45. There are going to be 3 breakout rooms, one for exercise 1, one for exercise 2, and one if you join late and don't know what's going on, but if you're hearing this right now, maybe that's not you. And there will be at least one member of the user services team in each of those rooms to help you. Remember, this is interactive. Talk to us, talk to each other. Don't just hang out and do stuff. Even if you're an expert, feel free to help other people. Again, it's interactive. It's supposed to be collaborative. Okay, so I will stop sharing. The link has been posted by Laura again. You may enter a breakout room. If you don't want to enter a breakout room, you can stay here. I'm going to turn my camera and mic off, but I'm here. I'm still standing here. So if you do want to talk to me, I'm also available to help you out too. In fact, I'll just keep my camera on. All right. Good luck. See you all in about 35 minutes. All right. All right. Hope you had fun. I think as far as like doing data analysis goes, making cool graphs is part of the more fun stuff. So let's go over how we might do this. Share again. Cool. Okay, so exercise 1 is just a plain old Databricks dashboard. We're going to use the CDR PSA community grocery table. So we can't do this from here. We have to go to the dashboard tab. So I'm going to control click so it opens in a new tab. I'm going to create a dashboard, a new blank one. And we can give it a name, grocery infographic, grocery info. Okay, so here's how a dashboard works. It gives you some detail here. It says step 1 is to click the data tab to get going. Create a data set for your dashboard. We can't make anything on our dashboard without data. And then once we have data, we can create a viz down here. We can even add a text box or a filter or move things around. So let's do the data part. And we're going to create from SQL. So you can create, I think if you just click add data source, I think you could just say like what table you want, but I think you have a little bit more control if you just create from SQL. So we are going to select star from CDR PSA community. And I like to use tab to autocomplete. We have some grocery data. And if we run this, we can see what's here. So we have some data on grocery store transactions, what month the transaction occurred, what item they were purchasing, what region, and how much the sale was for. So if you read my problem, I say, make sure to remove the item that doesn't belong as part of your data creation query. If you look at the items, you can see that one of these things is not like the other. We have apple, banana, carrot, durian, and what did I say? E was eggplant. Conveniently A through E. And you know what? I think xylophone is not a fruit, and the other ones are. So I think xylophone probably doesn't belong. So one of the best parts about creating a data set from a SQL query is that you can actually manipulate it, right? So where item is not equal to, and you have to spell it right, xylophone. Run this. This looks good to me. I think the filter worked. So this is the data set I want. You can add more data sets, but we just are going to do one here, and I am going to rename it. Let's call it grocery. Okay, so that's step 1. We've got a data set created. Now we can go back here and we can create a visualization. We can add it anywhere to our screen. I'll just put it right in the middle for now. And you can ask the AI assistant. Here it is. It just pops right up. What was the first one? A bar chart of total sales by item with region as color. I'm willing to bet that if you just copy and pasted that right into the AI assistant, it would work. But I don't know if you are all like reading the news and everything, but a new study just came out that said if you use AI too much, your brain is going to melt. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to make it myself. So what did I say? A bar chart with what? Sorry, I'm looking at my other window. A bar chart of total sales by item. So I think on the x-axis, I want the item. So I'll go to x-axis, the plus sign, item. And on the y-axis, I want the total sales. So if I just click sales, the default is sum, so this worked. But if you click this, it doesn't have to be the sum of sales. It could be, you know, the average, the median, the min, max, whatever you want, right? But it does so happen that we did want sum. And click it again. And I said, I want this by region, so I can actually change the color to differ by region. So if I do color plus region, we could see the breakdown. Looks like the East Coast is the largest buyer of all 4 regions. And we can also start to make this a little bit prettier. So for each of these, we can add a title. What's the title? I don't know. Say item sales by region. We can change the label on the x-axis item. Lowercase letters annoy me, but it does say item. Display it. I think we can also turn it off, maybe. No. There's got to be a way to turn that label off, but I don't know. Y-axis, sum of sale. I actually just kind of want to change it to total sale. Total sales. All right, that looks kind of neat now. Maybe I'll change the color to be region with a capital R. There. Okay. So that's our first graph. I'll only make one or two of these, but there it is. Let's try one more. The next graph I suggested, I'll put it right next to it. The next graph I suggested was a line chart of sales over time. So I think somebody in the last session tried this. If you just paste that into the AI assistant, it will not work because it thinks that month is a date time variable and it'll kind of get messed up. So you kind of got to do this one on your own too. So on the visualization tab, the default was bar, so we lucked out with the first one. I want a line chart. Advanced line. No, I don't want a forecast line. I just want a regular line. X-axis is going to be time, so month. And you don't want to transform this. So here's a trick, or the tricky thing that happened here, was that the X-axis of month, it thinks it's a number. I made them 1 through 12. So it did come in as an integer. And when you do a number on an axis, it wants to transform it. We do not want to transform it. So I'm going to say none. And now I got to change the y-axis to be, it was sales again. Yeah, sale. So here we go. Looks like people are mostly buying fruit in the summertime. Makes sense. I also said sales with each item on the same graph. So a quick way to do this is to change the color again to item. Now we can see some of these items are selling better than others. And you could play with the labels and things like that too. You can even customize the colors. For example, maybe you think apples should be red. Banana's already yellow. Carrots should be orange. There. Banana should be yellow. I've actually never played around with that. Anyway, you can keep going. You know what I'm doing here. And there's labels. I think that's obviously too busy. And you could change pretty much everything here. One last thing I want to showcase is you can add text. So if I add a text box, I think I'll actually put it above like a title here. This understands Markdown. So you can put an H1 tag, my big important dashboard. And this is a very and the underscores will make things italic. Come on, I think I just click out of it. There we go. The underscores will make things italic. The pound sign will make things an H1 tag, so like a title font size. And yeah, you can play around with this. I asked you to make 4 total graphs. You can make as many or little of these as you want. I hope that instead of like, following my directions to a T, you played around with a lot of things. And maybe you kind of brushed up against the edge of like what is and is not possible with Databricks dashboarding. If you're used to QuickSight or QuickView, Tableau, Power BI, all these other dashboarding softwares, you might think that there's not too much going on here. As far as I know, this is a relatively new-ish feature of Databricks, so keep an eye out. Hopefully new features of dashboarding to Databricks will be added over time. Okay, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on exercise 1 without even at least talking about exercise 2. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time again. So my cluster is down. I should have started it a couple minutes ago. I apologize. I feel like I do this every time. But I want to talk about the code here. So we have imported some data, the EV data set. When this code runs, it'll pop back up. But I want to talk about the widget here. So here I have listed the two EV types. I wrote them out explicitly, but you would probably want to do this programmatically. The two types of EVs in our data set. And then I created a widget with dbutils. If you've never played around with dbutils, it's what it sounds like. It's Databricks utilities that come pre-installed or preloaded every time you open up Databricks. So dbutils widget drop down. I give it a variable name, EVT for electric vehicle type. The default is all, and then the options are all, and then I add on the two EV types. When this code runs, you will see a widget pop up at the top, like right here. You can extract the value that the user or you actually select by using dbutils widget get and then calling it by the label you gave it, which was EVT. And then I'm going to pull my answer out of here. So you can see how you might even use something like this. You can actually manipulate the SQL directly. So the first graph I wanted you to make was a line graph of electric range over time. So I want to select everything from the electric vehicle data set where electric range is 0. That was part of the solution if you didn't read that up above. And if you don't filter it, that's it, right? That's all the data you need, just all of the data, and then you could make a graph based on this. But if you selected something besides all for the filter, you can add on. So remember, when you add on to a string, it just concatenates it onto the string. You can say where electric range is greater than 0 and the electric vehicle type is what you selected, right? And that would be an added where clause onto the SQL query, and it would make your data set smaller. And then if you make the visualization based on that, it will change. So hopefully this doesn't take too much longer to spin up. I know it is 56 after the hour. So actually, maybe Laura, would you like to send out the survey? And then hopefully as people are working on it, they can see that this will eventually pop up on my screen.
Yep, I can do that.
Cool.
All right, everyone should see a survey on their screen. Make sure you let us know how we're doing and if you have any suggestions for future topics that haven't been presented on.
Yeah, and to kind of emphasize and reiterate what Laura just said, please suggest stuff, right? The user services team is constantly trying to build new content that is useful to our users. So if you want content on a certain topic and for some reason we're not making it, this is your opportunity to tell us. My cluster is up, but it's taking a little bit long to run. All right. It is 12:59 and things are kind of still waiting here. So please feel free to hop off. Thank you all so much for joining. Here it is, the data set. And to create these things, you can, well, I think I made this off camera, and then you can add it to your notebook dashboard here. And then once you add it to your notebook dashboard, it works the same as the other kind of dashboard as well. All right. Thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Bye, everyone.